Sounds good. All right, welcome everyone to this edition of Sponsorship Connect. My name is Max Simpson. I am the marketing and reporting manager for the sponsorship space. So I'm seeing a lot of faces in here, a lot of returners and a lot of new folks. Appreciate you again for joining us. We have a really awesome panel lined up and excited for everyone to take part in this. So just to give a bit of context to Sponsorship Connect, how this is going to run, is we have our panelists. We're going to talk with them through a couple different questions related to social media and sponsorships for roughly 45 minutes. And then we are going to transition into networking breakout rooms. Breakout rooms will be roughly about 5 people, go through a couple different run-throughs, about 15 minutes each. You'll be randomized with people and you're able to connect with other people throughout the industry. But yeah, that is what we have going on here. Please feel free to hashtag Sponsorship Connect on socials, and you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at Sponsor Talk and on LinkedIn at The Sponsorship Space. So really appreciate your support. Thank you again, everyone, for tuning in. Yeah, we have a fantastic panel like we have alluded to, and quite frankly, a very phonetically pleasing panel as well. We have Karen, Kassie, Dan, and Derek. So allow me to go a bit more into their backgrounds. So first, we have Karen Remming, the social media director for the Golden State Warriors. We have Kassie Epstein, the social media manager of Gillette Stadium. Dan Marrazza, most recently of DraftKings and Vegas Golden Knights. He is the one sporting the very, very snazzy dad hat. And Derek Peterson, the Senior VP of Operations for Open Doors. All right, so as we have folks still trickling in, we'll go ahead and get it started. I'll just turn it over, go around the room. If you guys want to elaborate a bit on your experience, any notable projects you've been working on as of late, and anything else you'd like to hit on. Karen, we'll start off with you.
Sure. So as Max mentioned, I'm the social media director for the Golden State Warriors and Chase Center. What my position entails is developing the strategy and then implementation of said strategy for all Warriors owned social channels. So that's at Warriors, Warriors Shop, Chase Center, which is the new arena that we moved into not even a year ago yet. And then as well as providing any kind of guidance that I can to our community relations department, our dance team, and our camps, who all have their own independent handles. And as for a bit of my experience and background, prior to Golden State Warriors, I've been here for 2 years. Prior to GSW, I was with Pac-12 Network for 3 years, where I started out as a part-time freelance social media coordinator. And then I ended up leaving 3 years later, managing the team of social media coordinators there. And before that, I was doing PR and communications for Track 10 USA up in Eugene, Oregon. So I was on a bit more of the traditional communications path before I realized that I wanted to do something with a bit more creativity involved, such as social. I'll pass it to Kassie next.
Thanks, Karen. So, yep, like Max said, I'm Kassie Epstein. I handle the social media for Gillette Stadium. We are located, for those who don't know, in Foxborough, Massachusetts. So we're home to the Patriots of the NFL, the Revolution of the MLS, and then a myriad of other sports and NCAA tournaments and concerts that we bring into the venue. So we have teams here that manage the football team from a social side, the soccer team from a social side. I am just the venue and all the external events that we bring in. So with that comes, obviously touching upon Patriots and Revolution, but a lot of what I do is live music, NCAA sports, motorsports. Before this, I was an intern in college, interning for Patriots marketing. I've actually been working for the Patriots since I was a junior in college. So this is my 14th season. This is the only place I've worked since I graduated, so it's been a long time. I have a bit of a different path than a lot of people. I was a theology and psychology major in college and kind of fell into my marketing internship, and from there just really loved it and stayed with it. I work in our business development and external affairs department. And so when we were promoting our concerts, when I first was brought on, it's kind of when social media was booming from a business perspective. And so we just kind of started these accounts thinking that it was just going to be like a really small way to help move some tickets for events that we hadn't sold out. So literally started with our accounts when they had 0 followers. And now to watch them kind of grow into what they are today has been a real journey. So it's been great. So I don't know if Derek, you want to take it next?
Yeah, Derek Peterson. Been at Open Doors I'm in my 6th year here, which is crazy. Prior to that, I spent 8 years doing business development and account service at a creative agency here in Nebraska. Open Doors is headquartered in Nebraska. Hopefully, most folks know where that is on the map. So, shout out Nebraska. Excited to be here with everybody today. My job at Open Doors really is SVP of operations, yes, but overall, I just make sure our customers are happy. That's really what it comes down to. I've got a great team that I get to manage, and we get to work with a wide variety of partners, anywhere from professional leagues and teams down to colleges and universities, as well as sponsors and brands and licensees in the sports space. So I really get to work with most of these folks on the call. My fellow panelists is typically our customer type. So it'll be interesting as I get to hear from them and maybe pick up some tips to earn their business someday. Dan, finish us
I'll take
up.
it from there. As I'm Dan, I'm Kassie's neighbor up the Massachusetts coast, a little bit closer to Boston, where I spent the last 2 years with DraftKings, where I had joined the company back in 2018, right in that fun time when the Supreme Court had legalized sports betting, which was an interesting move for me. I'm the only person ever I had to leave Las Vegas to get involved in gambling. So I like to do things in reverse, I guess, is that before that, I had spent the previous 2 years with the Vegas Golden Knights, where I was the director of digital and social, where I think I was the 5th employee of the franchise for that whole 15-month build-up before the team had even played a game. So that was launching the team's website and social media from scratch. Prior to those 2 positions, I had spent my entire career exclusively in hockey. I'm originally from New Jersey. I started out back when I was a junior in high school, way back in 2004. Back then, social media wasn't really a thing unless it was the Facebook for those college students. So at the time, I was more trying to be a sports journalist and kind of pursued that through college at Ithaca College. Then all of a sudden, in that 2010-11 stretch, when social media became a little bit more prominent, my career started to shift, and it's been a fun venture ever since.
Absolutely. No, that's awesome. Appreciate everyone sharing a bit more of their experience. And the thing I love about this panel is everyone has been in the industry for, quite some time, industry veterans, if you will. But the unique thing is everyone here has experience with starting or building on a newer venture. Karen with Chase Center, Kassie with helping to establish and further promote Gillette Stadium, Dan with the Vegas Golden Knights, and Derek with Open Doors, a startup in its own right. So bouncing off that, would love to get, a bit of any advice or any experience learned along the way from starting out or in the initial stages of growing those accounts, and curious how, what that process is like, whoever wants to start.
I can jump in and get us going. So when I joined the Golden State Warriors, the Chase Center handles had already been started. We started them, I think, shortly after breaking ground. But when I took over the handles, it was about 1 year before we actually moved into the new arena. So there was, it almost felt like you were starting new accounts just because the content shifted so drastically in that year leading up, and then the first however many months that we were open before we got shut down. And I think that the biggest thing that I took away from that experience was that whenever you do start any kind of new accounts or any new venture, there's going to be such an insane learning curve. And the first 6 months, I felt like I was just absorbing and learning and trying things and seeing how our fans reacted, what stuck, what didn't, did really, really deep dives into our analytics to tell me all those things, just to kind of develop a base of a strategy to build off of. So it's a much longer process than I think a lot of people initially anticipate. And you will try things and fail, but that's okay, because you won't know what works unless you figure out what doesn't work.
So I'll take it from there. So when I got to Vegas, this will be Karen, you might want to mute. It was a rough night. I landed the night of Game 7 of the 2016 finals. So that was right when I arrived in Las Vegas. I think that was the I think it was on the TVs in the airport when I landed. But funny enough, it was a Sunday night, and that Wednesday, the 22nd, was when the NHL was going to be giving Las Vegas the franchise. At the time, I had not had a full-time job over the previous few months after I had a contract run out at the NHL League office, and everything moved incredibly quickly. I think I got called to get interviewed on June 6th. I think I got the offer on June 10th. I was out there on June 19th. And then on June 22nd, the NHL gave them the franchise. I wasn't allowed to tell anybody that I got the job because it would have broken the news that Las Vegas was getting an NHL team. So that was a real legit sneak away in the middle of the night, and all of a sudden all your people on the East Coast go, wait, you moved to Vegas? And I had. Is at the time, is like Karen had said, is you think you know what your plan is going in, but those plans are definitely going to change. I think in our case, one of the things that made it really interesting for us is we didn't have a team name. We didn't have players. We didn't have, I didn't even have an office computer yet. I was still on my personal computer. We didn't have maybe more than 5 or 6 employees. I think I was the only employee that wasn't in sales. So at that point, when it comes to developing a strategy, where kind of are you when it comes to developing a strategy when the people that you usually develop it with are not even employed yet by the team? So in our case, it was something where we started out saying, hey, Rome was not built in one night. Let's start very slow. Let's start with getting information out and setting this account up as a functional communications platform. And then over the following couple months, we started to be able to put that structure in place. For us, when that structure really started to build was 2 months after I got there. We hired a CMO. His name is Nami Epstein, and he's the one who started to really kind of drill into the branding aspect of things. Of how are we going to take this from being something that is just about communication, and how do we develop this into something that's going to pull a fan base in the desert? And thanks to Nami, he was the one who had come up with the brilliant idea, which really was a brilliant idea, to, instead of hiding from all the things that some people maybe feel from Las Vegas, to try to embrace those things instead. So I think that eventually manifested itself with our social media, with our game presentation, and getting those in sync sometimes was challenging. And it was to be that wild and crazy new team out there in the desert and have fun. And even with that though, is it takes 3 to 4 months. You can't just turn the switch on and just say, "Hey, we're gonna be wild and crazy now." It's a lot easier to inch along. It's a lot harder to go back than it is to keep inching forward. And for us, I would say we didn't really start to find our stride till we maybe about 10 months in. And but to that point, it's about getting approvals. It's about setting up with executives and getting that buy-in across the organization. Is it really can be a long process to kind of get something started like that from the beginning.
I can jump in here. Yeah, when I started Open Doors, I was coming from, the agency world where there are a lot of established processes and whatnot, where, jumping into a startup which is relatively young in its, life stage, I had to get over the idea of the trying things new that Karen referenced there, that it was more about progress versus perfection for us. And it still continues to be, where we try a lot of things, and some of our biggest breakthroughs have come because we're trying something, whether it's in new tech or new features or new services that we offer, et cetera. That's been the biggest difference between Open Doors, Derek, and anything before that, is the ability to throw something out there without it being perfect yet, or having everything figured out, to where that's a strength of ours now as a company and as an organization, where if we can get market feedback, we can develop insights and get data on something, and then try to perfect it as it's already in market. So that's been a big part of my experience at Open Doors, is in my shift as a professional, is not trying to perfect something before you're starting to get feedback on it. And that's with the people that I report to, and then us as an organization, where we're trying to get feedback from our customers with new features when it's in beta, and then put it out for general availability. So that's been a big shift for me in my mindset as a professional as well.
Yeah, I think, just echoing what everyone said. I think especially, when I started an account from literally 0 people, like Karen said, it was just throwing everything against the wall to see what stuck. And that was back closer to 2009, 2010, when there wasn't all of, the analytics that you could pull for all these different pieces to really do those deep dives to figure out kind of your fan behavior. So that was I mean, just weeks and weeks and months of just like throwing things out, brainstorming new ideas of things that we could do and just seeing if anything stuck. And again, like Karen said, like I think also the things I learned most from were the things that completely fell flat. Like it's tougher to tell like when things like kind of work, like okay, like not sure why, but the things that fell completely flat, it was really helpful because then just knew you were never going to make that mistake again. Like it's a one-time thing and you were never going to come back to that. I mean, we notoriously had a giveaway that we did for this like really fantastic concert package. Did this a whole setup of a giveaway and had 3 entries, like 1, 2, 3 entries. So, I mean, it's one of those things that I mean, we've all had those stories of things that just you think is going to really take off and you just can't take it to heart because things just don't work all the time. And I think to be that kind of resilient and just not take those things personally, that everyone's going to have those failures. And onto that too is that, 10 years into this, you still have to be flexible and try new things and pivot and change the way that you do things, because the way that I did things in 2012 when they were working really well, I certainly wouldn't do the same things in 2020. So it's that ability to be really flexible and continue learning as all these programs develop and change, and there's new platforms, and TikTok wasn't a thing 2 years ago and now that's everywhere. So it's being able to pivot and change and not be stuck in your old ways, because even like a year ago is an old way and it might not necessarily be relevant or work anymore.
Absolutely. And the common thing amongst everything I heard was it's not being afraid to try new things, especially in those initial stages where you're trying to figure out what's going to work, what's not going to work, and having the backing of your team to be able to try those new things. And that leads into a lot of what we see these accounts doing over time is growing the community. That's a huge aspect of of good social media, being able to scale down your following to be able to connect with, individual, social media users. How has that process looked over time? And is there anything initially that comes to mind that's been successful in growing that digital community? Dan, if you want to kick it off. Oh, Dan, you are on mute.
That was intentional. That was my way of saying I don't want to go first. No, just kidding. If the question is what things have worked and how do you kind of find that over the years, is I think piggybacking off of what Kassie said, is it is ever evolving. Is that right now, I always say there's probably some kid in Silicon Valley that's coming up with something that none of us could even imagine what it is, but in 6 months, it might be part of our everyday routine. And to that point is what things were even 2 years ago and 3 years ago is not even close to what it is now. I think for me, noticing what has worked the best over the years is a combination of a couple things. I think it's, yes, using data and having intelligence behind the decisions you're making, but it's also about trusting your gut a little bit. And it's also about internal stakeholders. And I think the internal stakeholders, when it comes to building something, is the foundation that I always try to lean upon. Where as much as we want to talk about numbers and engagement and revenue, at the end of the day, you're a brand, and engagement isn't a good thing if you're not being true to what your brand is. So starting something new, I think the way I've always looked at it is, and what's been successful for me is, rather than saying, hey, we want to get this many followers with this much engagement, what is it do we want to be? What does our general manager want us to be? What does our team owner want us to be? What does our head of marketing want us to be? And all those various stakeholders, and starting to define those things. And at the beginning, even if something is maybe not catching on with your audience just yet, as long as it's staying true to represent what that brand is that you want to build, I think that's the best starting off point you could possibly be in. I think that's something you could always build upon and move farther. But I think looking at it brand first, as far as what works, is that, yeah, it's about numbers, but more than that, focus on being who you are and staying true to that. I think that would be the thing that, as all these different trends change over the years, I think that's a concept that stayed pretty universal throughout that time.
Yeah, that idea that Dan talks about is staying true to your brand. It is important. It's been important for us at Open Doors too, with we really do believe in sort of the community of what we're doing and trying to, bring everybody along with us. It hasn't been about, competition and whatnot, but it really has been about, the athletes in the space. That's what we care about. We care about the athletes. They're first and foremost for us, and they're central to what we do, and in trying to, everybody, as long as everyone is sort of around that same purpose, that's been really key for us in terms of building our, community of our fans and people that we care about. So I think, I'm right with you there, Dan. I think there is a lot about, trusting the numbers and from our social perspective, seeing what content fans engage with or followers of ours engage with. At the same time, like, if we're continuing to stay true to our mission, I think we're going to live with that every time out.
Yeah, also +1, +2 to staying true to the brand, especially when it comes to building a community. Like, buzzword is authenticity, but it just like comes down to transparency and trust. And if your fan base, users, consumers, whatever it may be, have that kind of trust in you as a brand, then that will just have a natural and healthy community tied to your brand. For us at GSW specifically, it's really interesting because the majority of our followers online actually live outside of the United States. And so we have this insane international presence. And so our community online is massive, and they are all over the globe. And so how we go about fostering that community is completely different than how we go about fostering the community that follows Chase Center handles, because those followers are largely in the Bay Area. They want to feel connected to the arena, or they might have, more standard questions about what it's going to be like to visit the arena. So for GSW, when we go about building a brand, the main thing that we always point to is that organic social media's intention is not to promote, it's not to amplify, whatever word you want to use. For us, our primary intention for organic social is to connect. And so we want to be the connecting point between our millions of followers all across the world and this team and these athletes that they love. And if we can be that connection for them, then we'll have a really strong and trust-filled community. For Chase Center, obviously we want to connect our followers to the experience of being in the arena, but there's also an aspect of, customer service that's tied to doing arena social, which I'm sure Kassie is way too familiar with, and just making sure that you have that box ticked perhaps just a little bit more heavily than we would necessarily from the Warriors handles, just because of the intention of our followers on Chase Center versus the intention of followers on the Warriors. It does make it a little different, but all in all, it boils down to trust, transparency, and being the connecting point for us.
Yeah, I mean, I think Karen said it, like, for a venue social, it really has become a huge piece of what we do as customer service. And I think, as we said before, like, it's important to stay flexible and be able to change, how you run these accounts. And so when we first started, it was just ticket sales and trying to find a new way that if we had an event that wasn't sold out, how else can we reach fans to communicate those things and sell tickets and get butts and seats. And then I think in that time that we built this community, it's obviously we're providing content for our fans, but it was also a lot of community listening and spending a lot of time literally reading all the tweets that were coming in and seeing what fans wanted from us, what they were coming to us for, what they expected from us. I think that big question of, like, why would someone follow a stadium? It's not a team, it's not a person. But, when I can answer that, like, now I know why someone's following us, and that's the content that I should be trying to provide them. So for us, it's a lot of that behind the scenes content. We want to provide a source of content that people aren't going to find anywhere else, and that we'll be able to deliver something special. It rewards them for following us. And while we were doing that, I think it really then just became very clear that people were coming to us for customer service, questions, issues, questions ahead of time. For our concerts, we have a lot of people that come on site that have never been to our venue or have been to our venue 5 years ago. When it's Patriots fans, they are coming to our games most of the time 8 times a year minimum. They're probably coming to training camp if we have postseason. So that fan behavior, they know when to arrive, when their friends are coming, what parking lot they want to park in, what gate they enter. They have their whole process really mapped out clearly. For our concert fans, they really have a lot more questions. This might be the only time that we're able to have them on property. And so it's really important for us to ensure that they have a great experience while they're here. So for us, it became a lot of, hearing what questions or concerns fans had. And then on the back end for us, creating content that was informing them of those things that they were confused about, because obviously we were lacking in something if they didn't know. And then, putting that information out, seeing if they, learned those things, had new questions, making sure that we're connecting with fans. I always tell people I would much rather be bombarded with questions, a week, 2 weeks ahead of an event than have those fans come on site and be wandering around and not know where to go. So for us, it's a lot of fan customer service. And then I'm sure Karen's seen this too, like now a big part of what we do is when fans are on site here is doing real-time customer service resolution if we can. And you can change a person's entire experience. I've literally seen it unfold on Twitter where we've had someone tweeting frantically, irately at us if, their seat is broken or they got a hot dog that was cold. It was something that inevitably is going to happen if you have 70,000 people in a building. And, we'll see that this person is having a terrible experience. They're tweeting up a storm saying they're never going to come here again. And I can see, or, reach out to them, find out where they're sitting. And then within 15 minutes, have someone deployed to their seat to, fix their situation, fix a seat or find a new location for them. And then you'll see that fan then turns around and is, tweeting out, this is the best experience I've ever had. I can't believe this person came within 20 minutes of me tweeting. Like nothing has ever been like this anywhere else I've gone. So it went from, I'm never going to come here again to before that person left property, having this huge advocate for our building, which is, what we're always trying to do. So in that kind of community sense, I think it's a lot of listening to what fans are coming to you for and expecting, and being able to kind of pivot and keep, changing to make sure that you're satisfying the things that they want to see from you.
I don't know how you guys do that, by the way. You have way more patience and tolerance and graciousness than maybe most, but I just continue to be impressed by how team accounts and customer service accounts within the teams or entities handle the negative side of it, right? And it plays out for all of us to see. Like we all can see it if we want to. We can see that fan tweeting irately at the team account about something that's going on in venue. So it's not just a one-to-one conversation. It's a one-to-one conversation that we all can see. So it is impressive when you see it handled correctly or in a very customer service mentality way. And I know that's what the job is, but sometimes it is really hard to put aside the personal side of dealing with that type of interaction with the I'm the professional face of the organization right now. So I don't know how folks do it, but I continue to applaud it when I see it done right.
One thing I want to follow up on that with too is that I'm really glad Kassie used that example, is that sometimes you'll see on Twitter or you'll see that buzzword, don't read dimensions. But honestly, if you're going to work in this business, you have to read dimensions to some degree, because if you don't, you're not going to have any understanding of who your customers are. And if you're not going to understand who your customers are, the expression I use, you turn social media into anti-social media, where it's anti-social behavior, where it's not about you just pushing out your content and hoping people like it. It's about connecting. So the fact that Kassie brought that up, I think, is a really good example of why there is value of reading dimensions.
Yeah, and I think, I try, over, reading so many thousands of comments over the years, right? It's sometimes, like Derek said, like hard to be like, oh my God, they're yelling at me, but they're not yelling at me, Kassie. They're, frustrated for whatever other reason. But, I think over the years, I've, really tried to, put, like labels on the comments that we get. So there's for me, there's 3 types of comments that we'll get. It's either positive and it's just someone that's trying to say something positive. And then there's 2 types of negatives, right? There's a negative where it's I hate your team. I never want you to win. You guys suck. And then there's a constructive criticism where it's I was in this traffic, or this gate I came through, someone didn't know where I should be going, and this was really frustrating. So the people that are just ranting over your team is just you just have to scroll past, not even give it a second glance, and just not even look at it. And then the people that are, saying negative things, but it's in a critiquing way or an experience that they had, those are the things that, while I wish everyone had a 100% fantastic experience on site, the critiques are also really, really helpful, because we can really pinpoint, feedback that someone might, when they get home at the end of the night, not take the time to send an email to our customer service. This is a much quicker way that they can send that feedback, and it can be really helpful for us to ensure that it doesn't happen again. So every time I look through those comments, it's like, which one of these 3 boxes is it ticking? And if it's not one of the 2 that I'm going to respond to, then you just have to in one ear and out the other.
I like that a lot. I think that's a really good way to compartmentalize things, and it takes a lot of the, I guess, guesswork or homework of figuring out what am I going to respond to, where am I going to put my time and energy into something. I like that a lot. Kind of on the same line of working with people's feedback and other requests in social and across other departments, but especially it makes its way onto social. Social media managers and team accounts are consistently having to balance brand voice, their own content, and then as well as needed pieces from partnerships, ticket sales, any event pieces, any additional standards or anything that needs to be communicated. I feel if you ask this question to 10 different people who run accounts, you might get 10 different answers. So I'm curious, how do you balance that? How do you balance that flow of communication across departments, that workflow, that process of how can we generate content? I know that's a lot of questions there, but I think trying to get a grasp of how people handle that process, I think that's something that there's a lot of discrepancy on. So I would love to hear from y'all on what you guys do in that process to help make it a bit smoother.
I would love to start this one off. So that is something that is just, regardless of who you talk to who works in social, I can almost guarantee that they would say that just communication has at one point been a pain point in their career. I think that it stems from social media being such a new industry, and a lot of other departments or industry veterans just aren't used to having to fold another group of people into the loop of whatever they're planning. So it kind of gets left as like an afterthought. But as social is becoming more established, it's been around for a decade now, I think that that is changing. And so for me and how I like to work, I always tell my coworkers that you cannot bring me in too early on things. If you think that there's a chance that the event you're planning, you might want social coverage at it, or you might want some kind of recap of a community event, or if a partner is coming to you with an idea that you're kind of iffy on, like anything like that, bring me in as early as possible. I would much rather kind of get things, I don't want to say nip at the bud, but just kind of get things under control as early as possible and start kind of building out my own team's plan for whatever it is that you might be coming to me for. And also then we can get ahead with the creative team for any kind of assets we need, if we need special filters, any equipment, like anything like that. So that's been the biggest solve for me, is just I'm constantly like in my coworker Slacks and emails, following up, just touching base with all of them from like a human standpoint as well as a working standpoint. I'm not a, blinders on monster. But I'm just kind of constantly being brought into the loop very early on projects and different initiatives that are going on in the organization. And I truly can't imagine having to do the kinds of coverage and things that we do at the scale that we do them at without being brought in that early.
Yeah, going off of that, I think one of the things when it comes to being brought in early, which I think is really vital with this, is also doing the best you can to formalize a process of being brought in, where I think we've all been in those shoes where it'll be like 8 o'clock and somebody from another department will come, hey, can you throw something on like at 8:10? And it's like, that might not be the best idea to do that right now. So bring someone in early and having that formalized process of, if you are the sponsorship department or you are the ticketing department or whatever department it might be, or it might even be team ops, general managers and players for that matter, is that what is the amount of time that's needed to get good content ready? Once you determine what that is within your team, depending on the size of your staff, you have a basis of how you can formalize that process. Whether in my experience, I think the best way to do it is having a form, just like a simple form that can be done email-wise. And it's, what's the event you need? Do you have any ideas of what you want to do? And then we can bring it into social, bring it into my team, and we can discuss it and go back. That being said, what you'll often see a lot of times, because as we've all said, is social is only about 10 years old, is that sometimes other departments don't have as much experience with social. They don't necessarily understand the things that go into creating good content. So they might come and say, can you post this in 10 minutes when it's not really feasible? So I think if you are not proactive and if you just look at it and say, hey, if you ever have anything come to me, I think you can end up chasing it. I think you need to go to them. I think you need to set up regular meetings with different departments, whether it's weekly, bi-weekly, whatever the case may be, and brainstorm ideas. Ask what's on the agenda. Get to understand that. And by the combination of you going to them and showing that you invested in what they want to be doing, that allows you to get ahead of it. And by formalizing a process and getting the buy-in on that, that allows you to avoid some of those late curveballs. I think all of that goes and folds up into that getting ahead of things, but it really, I think, is a massive part of this.
Yeah, I agree with, everything that Dan and Karen said, and the communication is really just the number one piece, I think, for us too, that, as long as you loop me in, like, I can't help you if you don't tell me what's going on. And I think, we're getting to that point where people understand it's not just like someone in their phone tweeting something. Like, there's all these different steps that go into it, and I have to loop in like our digital team and our creative team. Like, there's just a lot of pieces. I think for us on the stadium side, it's been really interesting, and it's probably different than, the team accounts, is that we weren't always a place that our sponsorship folks like thought that they could come to promote pieces and tie in sponsors. And for us, it's been a really great kind of third, prong of our social, platform of, if it doesn't work for soccer, if it doesn't work for football, or if you can't do it because of NFL rules or MLS rules, like, here's this really nifty loophole here of, a brand that is absolutely tied into the teams, that is absolutely tied into this region, that isn't technically the team name, but you can get by with getting that connection to those fans. And so it's been really interesting that in recent years, we've gotten a lot more sponsorship asks, or our sponsorship team has gone to a company, and if it doesn't work for one of our teams, they'll go back and say, we have this third account, which is the stadium. Here are the stats of the stadium, whatever, it could run here. And then it's been really interesting to find sponsorship opportunities there. I think also for this year, it's been really different in that there's a lot of like makeup asks and make goods that we have to do, because a lot of those sponsorship activations that I'm sure all of you guys like are just not happening. We don't have fans in our stands right now. So all of these things that we would have been doing on site aren't happening. And so it's been a really interesting process, for me to make sure that if I'm just throwing something out there on social, posting a new photo, asking our fans something, and something really takes off, is that not just continuing it, but then going to our sponsorship team and saying, here's something that threw at a wall, it really worked, it resonated with our fans. Is there a way that we could tie in a sponsor with it? Maybe not bringing a lot of money for it, but it can be a make good for something that isn't happening. And so, for instance, our first game, I tweeted out we didn't have fans in the stands. And so from a venue standpoint, it was like a roll call of, reply back with where you're watching the game since you can't be here. Let's see kind of where our fans are. Got a huge response from it, brought it to our sponsor team. And then our sponsorship folks went out, found a group that worked out really well for it, was able to be a really nice fit. And now we've been able to do that, every home game since then. So, I think most of the time the sponsorship team will come, to our accounts and propose something and see if it fits. Now it's been a lot of us seeing what works on the organic side. And then if there's something that kind of pops up that really goes well with our fans, then turning around and bringing a sponsor in and getting it that way, which has been new but interesting.
What I love about this conversation, not to completely hijack it, is as we were on this Zoom, I got a customer service DM from a corporate account, and they're doing customer service for motor vehicle. So I think that was perfect timing. But just that point is, we all work in this business, and we're used to having been on the other side of it. And even for me, just having that simple pleasure of having motor vehicle actually answer and provide a solution that does not include me getting to wait online at 4:30 in the morning I am very thrilled with that. So if it has this impact on us in the industry, think of what it does for people that are not in the industry. Just think of it that way. It's a very timely thing that's buzzing down here, down below motor vehicle. We're looking at 7:40 on a Monday night here, Tuesday night.
Max, I was just going to say, as the one panelist that has never been a part of one of those conversations between the activation team and the social team, I would just say, like, having respect for the other person that you're having a conversation with, because I just, the folks on the social team spend so much time like curating these feeds and really honing in that authenticity that Karen talked about, and transparency that, it started out where sponsorship teams didn't realize there was even an asset here to sell. And then slowly but surely they started to realize there is an asset, but they didn't know how to sell it. And then the social teams, worked with them to help them to sell this through to sponsors. And then it almost took over at that point where it became an afterthought. Just do it. And that's such I don't like that part of the business or the industry where it's just an afterthought. Just post it. It's like, that can't be the mentality that's coming from the activation team or the sponsorship team or even the brand, the sponsor themselves. It can't be just post it. Like that is not going to work for any. It's lose across the three entities there: the brand, the sponsorship team, the social team. Everybody loses if that's the mentality of trying to get something out on a feed. It's not going to work. It's going to ruin relationships. And I think there's just a basic level of respect that this is someone's craft that they spend their entire day on, and many evenings and weekends. That this feed is their life. So just to walk into an office and say, just post it, like, that has to go away.
Yeah, Derek, I think Team Slap a Logo will be will be up in arms with you afterward. No, I'm totally kidding. The echoing theme between all of this is it's collaboration, right? It's figuring out what works on the team side for the partnerships department and for the partner themselves. It's taking that next step and really trying to figure out what is the whole value in there that helps to bring everything together and raise it as best we can. I know we're getting towards the end of the panel time, so I did want to ask if anyone, whether one they worked on or one that they've seen recently, if there's a favorite social-based partnership that comes to mind. I'll throw out two that I saw recently. The first one, the Washington football team, over the weekend, they defeated the Dallas Cowboys. Their win graphic, which is sponsored by Geico, they are not a partner of the sponsorship space, disclaimer. It was actually hilarious. They did like the sad cry, like a sad Cowboys fans crying in the stands. I thought that was hilarious because the ability to be nimble like that and have a partner tied to something that, quite frankly, I think blew up for a simple win graphic was hilarious, in my opinion. And the second one I saw recently, the Atlanta Falcons, they did a collaboration with Microsoft Surface. They essentially they did a behind the scenes where their graphic design team actually showed them illustrating on the Microsoft Surface the design for these like Rock the Vote cleats that players actually ended up wearing. So going from concept to actual final product, and the Microsoft Surface was very organically involved. They showed videos of the actual Surface in action, but there was actually not a single tag, not a single Microsoft Surface like imprinted logo on it. It was strictly just bringing concept to life. So I thought those are two examples that very much stuck out to me because it was very fluid and very organic. If anyone else has anything that comes to mind, I mean, Derek, I know on your guys' end with Open Doors, you guys have a lot of things cracking in terms of the process for that.
Yeah, from obviously software utility and whatnot. I mean, we for the past, and this is not team, I just go the sponsor side here, but for the past 3 years now, we've partnered with Stryker in October for Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And I continue to be impressed with the direction of that campaign. Go check it out. I mean, it's on social right now. But things like that where there's a little more to it are the ones that make me happy to work in the industry that I work in. I know what we do is it's not, we're not out on the front lines or anything of that nature every day, but I really enjoy getting to be part of, or at least see the inner workings for some of these campaigns for cause marketing. And that's one of them that I just continue to be impressed by.
I think my favorite one it's not as deep or comprehensive to my understanding as your guys's, but the Bud Light Showtime cam that the NFL is doing is just, I mean, like they knew that they were going to have a franchise that goes viral every single time that they post, and they just got the right partner on. And I know like Anheuser-Busch has so many entities between like Budweiser, Michelob Ultra, Bud Light, and so I think that the pairing of Bud Light with something as light and fun as a Showtime cam was really smart. But it's just a piece of content that I really, really love that happens to be sponsored.
Yeah, I was gonna say I had two. One of those, Karen, was that like fan cam of the touchdown cam, which is just, you see them everywhere. Like even if it's not my team, I'm seeing them everywhere. And it's, you get that, just that buy-in from the players who obviously want to be a part of it without trying to force them to be a part of it. So it just works out so seamlessly that way. I think, another one that I really love, which isn't even fully social, it's just more digital, is, for the Patriots, we have a Putnam fan cam after the game, which I know a lot of venues do those fan cams where they do like the full 360-degree photo of the stadium full of people. And then you can go on after the fact and zoom in and see your face. And it's really interesting because it's not necessarily based on social, though it is shared there, but you see it pop up everywhere because people zoom in, take a photo of their face like in the crowd while they're there. And that's been really cool to see, kind of people that love just being able to just relive that memory again. And this year it's turned into, you're not there. We don't have fans in stands right now, but to be able to go in, you can find your seat and then upload a photo of yourself. And now we're getting this tapestry of fans who aren't in the building, but uploading themselves, becoming a part of this tapestry, which has been really cool. And I thought a really interesting way to kind of pivot and change for this year, but still make it work for what's happening.
The cutouts have been great across sports. Like I love them. I can't afford to get my face where I want it in all these places, but I love that concept, and whoever started it, flattery and imitation, like that, this is it, because it's blown up across all venues and I love it. I love to see it.
Ooh, what team was the one that had the whole section filled with the little Cinnamon Toast Crunch pieces of cereal?
I was just thinking about the same one. Boy, I'm blanking. I'm blanking on which one it was.
Come on, attendees, somebody Google it for us really quick. There, thanks, Neil.
There we go.
Hey, okay. Oh, Neil's on it. Okay.
All over.
Thank you, Neil.
And no, so the last one I was going to touch on was not necessarily a campaign as much as it was a single post. And if I can, I'm going to screen share it in a second. The reason I thought that it came from the Pittsburgh Penguins, and the reason it was so good, I thought, was I think I looked at it for 5 minutes before I even understood it was an ad. It was such good content, and it was so well integrated that I didn't really even see it. So let me screen share this. And 1 second. Max, can you enable my screen sharing?
I just did it right now.
Sure. So here we go. So this was Pittsburgh Penguins graphic where it's Crosby, it's Malkin, it's the players driving the cars you can see. And then if you follow the mouse down to the center middle, you got a Dunkin' Cup. Then if you look down in the middle, up in the middle of the GPS, you got Lexus. And then down in the bottom right on the back of the seat, you have an EA Sports video game. I think when I first saw this as just a graphic, I thought it was, man, this is really cool artwork. And then I started looking and saying, hey, there was a Lexus there, and there was a Dunkin', and it didn't even connect for the first second that this was an ad. And then I started to think about it. I'm like, man, was this intentional or was this like a happy accident? So I messaged someone with the Penguins, and they said no, it was intentional. And I was so impressed by that, because I think when we talk about not being on teams slap a logo on it, so to speak, is that team slap a logo is just slapping a logo on it. Something like this is the antithesis of that, where this does not seem like it's salesy because I didn't even know I was being sold. I think that is something that is a real takeaway on a lot of it. The best sponsored content is content that you don't feel like you're being sold. It's content that's just good content that just so happens to have a sponsor involved in it in some way. There's lots of other examples that I know many of you have touched on already, but just that individual Penguin post was the only one that ever fooled me that way, so I wanted to give them a shout on that.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I think that actually is perfect timing. That actually gets to the end of our panel session. Really appreciate everyone for participating. Any questions that were not answered in the chat, this is the beauty of the breakout rooms. I believe all 4 of our panelists are staying on for the breakout rooms. So again, those are going to be about 4 15-minute sessions. You'll be, you will be in a room with at least 1 panelist at some point in the session, so you can ask any questions you have then. But again, this is the time for networking, any just talking, whatever comes up. We do have some prompts that we'll throw out that if there's a lull in conversation, feel free to go off of it. If not, by all means, ignore it and just go off of the flow of conversation. We will also link the panelists' Twitter and LinkedIn information in there. So feel free to give them a follow if you haven't already. Dan, I'm turning over to you. Do you have a spooky season dad joke to end the panel?
Oh man, I think I've tweeted most of my good ones.
I hope you have the chamber on that one.
Let me say that is I tweeted one of my favorite ones before, so I'm gonna go with that one. Spoiler alert. I guess it's a preview we can get if we go on my account. Is how come they ran out of food at the Halloween party?
Why?
Because everyone was a goblin.
Oh my gosh.
This is what happens. You can't blame me. You got to blame Max. He just served that one up for me.
I did. I did. It was premeditated. And one of my favorite interactions is Dan posting a pun and then Kassie following up with Dan all caps exclamation points. It happens.
We've been down this
all the time because it's all the time.
Amazing.
It's about building our brand here.
All right. Well, yeah, that.
Hey, Max.
Yeah.
I'm just jumping here and here. So firstly, guys, apologies. I saw in the chat there was a bunch of profanities. I had actually responded to someone on Twitter because they said the link wasn't working. Rookie mistake on a social panel to reply with the Zoom link on the Twitter. So I just deleted that. I'm going to switch it up and actually create a new link. So I just sent a link to everyone. If you don't mind just jumping on that, we're going to do the breakout room pre-assigns on there. Because there's actually, I realize there's also no webinar feature that ties to the breakout rooms. So we had to switch anyways. Great panel. Sorry about that. Just wanted to apologize. And we'll keep going with the breakout rooms. So if you can, just click on the new Zoom link.
We'll head over there. See everybody there.
Yeah.